I think for me, it's been relationships. And so my relationship with the father, my relationship with my wife, which has been critical. I'll be married 50 years this year, but she was so supportive when I would go, like I paid myself $41,000 a year for 11 years in a row. And I was like, Wendy, this is crazy. I mean, I was making $250,000 10 years ago. I can go get a job for triple what I'm making now, maybe probably more than that. You know, no, I believe in you. You can do this. I believe you can do this. Okay, keep going, but this doesn't seem smart. And then she was right.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Bew White, who shares his life and business journey. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from Oscar Wilde. To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people just exist. I have to say that's just sad, and I know it's not you. Everyone listening should be living full out. Before we continue, let's get to last week's action step, which was to think of a change you need to make where you've got a negative attitude towards it and start to shift and be more positive about how the change could benefit you. As we chatted about last week, the one thing that never changes is change, and it's going to keep happening, and it's going to happen faster and faster. So let's master it. Let's figure out how to be the change agents. I was just listening to someone speak and they talked about the word recreation, but he pronounced it differently. He said recreation. Do the things you do for fun help you to recreate who you are? For example, for me, going camping is recreation. It gives me that thinking time in nature. Allows me to recreate me. Fishing might do the same. Golf, on the other hand, just causes me stress. No recreation or recreation going on there. I've made it a habit to block out a weekend every quarter to just turn off and let recreation happen in my life, making sure I'm going where I want to and things are going the way I enjoy. What are you recreating in your life? And does your recreation lead to that? If not, make a change. Today we have a guest who's going to share his life journey, including the ups and downs and the recreations he went through. He also shares what it's like to be an entrepreneur and what you need to be able to succeed. Because the truth is, it's not for everyone. There's many gems about living life and how to get the most from it. Bew White III is chairman of the board of Gabriella White and its brands, Summer Classics, Gabby, and Wendy Jane. In 2013, he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Society of International Business Fellows. In 2021, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Casual Furnishings Association. He's also the subject of his well-received biography, a summer classic, The Bew White Story. Let's meet Bew and learn from him. Welcome to Rich Yourself, Bew White. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky.
I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
I have to say, I was kind of a silver spooner, you know what I'm saying? And that I grew up, I didn't learn that much about money until I didn't have any. So that's when you kind of find yourself. That's the same thing that happened to me on learning about financials is once I started my business, I realized, boy, I better learn how to read a financial statement or I'm dead. I've got to see where my problems are. And if I can't read a financial statement, I can't even stay in business because I can't tell if I'm making or losing money. So that became a critical part of my financial, because that's much later in life. Or if your checkbook, what is that story? As long as I got checks, I've got money. Well, I found that out. That doesn't work either, So I guess I learned about money. I went off to school when I was 16. I went to prep school. And so I had to keep up with my money there. And so I learned some about there. But then when I got to college, I joined the fraternity. And I wasn't treasurer, but I was in charge of entertainment. So I had to figure out how to get money out of the treasurer. So I was like, understood where the dues go and all the money's going and how they pay for all the food in the fraternity house, that kind of thing. I learned some. And then, of course, you rent your apartment or your house or whatever you do. This is a great story. So I rented a house. It is in Auburn, Alabama, and there was a 3-bedroom house. It was $130 a month, split 3 ways. So you're talking about, $40 plus each. Collecting the money from those guys was so hard every month. And one time we had 2 people in one room and then 1 in one. So it's 4 people, $130 a month. I had the hardest time getting money from those guys to pay the rent. It was unbelievable. I was like, man, I hope I never have to rent to anybody.
So how do you go from silver spoon to having no money? Yeah.
Silver spoon is when your parents are taking care of you, right? And then you get out of college and you have a job and a wife and you're taking care of everything yourself. You're not asking for money, So even though my parents were wealthy, they weren't giving me money. And they weren't wealthy enough to I wasn't where I had my own account, where I just take any money I want out of it. So, a trust fund kid. I was not a trust fund kid. I wasn't that kind of silver spooner, but my great-grandfather had started a huge company that became a Fortune 500 company. And so that's where I ended up starting to work. But I still had to work. I worked since I was 13 years old. So I always wondered if I could retire or not because I'd worked so much. And I had a good work ethic. I think that's really one of the things that I've taught my children is to have a really high work ethic.
Is there a reason they didn't teach you about money? Were they just too busy running the business, or?
A reason that my parents didn't teach me that? They weren't really running the business. My father was an attorney. And so he was a partner in the largest law firm in Alabama. It was the largest law firm. At one point, it's the largest law firm in the Southeast before Atlanta got so big. And then that changed. And then he was on the board of 4 Fortune 500 companies. So he earned his money, but he was tight. He was really tight with his money. My mother was more giving, and they gave me some stock in this company that my great-grandfather, all the children got some stock in that. It wound up to be about $125,000 in stock when they sold it. So it doesn't sound like a lot now, but it was a lot to me. It's basically all I had other than my salary and my house.
Still a nice payout.
Yep.
So you got out of college, and did you go straight into the family business, or did you go do something else first?
Well, I worked in the clothing business from the time I was 16 till I was 22. And then I took the summer off, got married, and then moved to New York in September of 1972. But while I was in the clothing business, this is kind of an interesting story. This was probably my first real lesson about money or about fact. It ended up being about fashion, but it really relates to money. There's something that happened in the 70s that's really, I'm not sure there's been anything quite like it that's happened, and it was a trend. And the trend was wide ties. Now, everybody wore ties back then. And ties were going from 2.5 inch to 4 inches. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but it was huge. I mean, it's like, and then it caused your shirts to change because the knot was bigger, and so you needed a bigger collar. And then everything changed. 2-button suits, jackets came in, wide lapels came in. And I was working at a clothing store that was real English, haberdashery type place. And he would let me wear wide ties in there. And then everybody that walked in the front door would say, "Do you have wide ties?" And it's called Richards of Mountain Brook. And in fact, there was an English colonel in there that worked in there. And he had this whole English thing going on, British thing going on. And so I'd go to Richard and go like, "Hey, all your customers are coming to the front door asking for wide ties." And I'm like sending them, there's another store, men's clothing store 50 steps away. I'm sending them all over there. "Oh, it's a fad." I'm like, I don't think so. I think this is a trend. And if you miss it, I could probably sell them a shirt if you get the wider collar shirts. And I could maybe get it into a jacket or 2-button or wider lapels. And all you have is 3-button coats. No, I'm not going there. And of course, he never went there, and he lost tons of business. It wasn't a fad. It was a trend. It stayed in for a long time. If you look at Johnny Carson's, go back and look at Chuck Carson in the 70s, you'll see they're all wearing these pretty brash outfits back then. But he didn't go there, and then he ended up going out of business. I was like, man, if I ever get in business for myself, I'm never going to let that happen. So that was a great lesson, business lesson, and probably financial as a result.
You have to listen to your customers, right?
Yeah.
And what they want and follow the trends. I will say, I grew up during the 70s. It wasn't the stylish generation between bell bottoms and platform shoes.
Right. Yeah. Now, I didn't tell him to get into bell bottoms, but they were coming. Leisure suits. Oh, he does leisure suits. I was like, Richard, nobody's going to wear these things. And he's got leisure suits. I was like, okay, I give up. You could have had wide ties and made a fortune, and now you're doing leisure suits.
So then from there, how did you get into the family business?
So I decided I would try to get in the family business. And so when I got to my sophomore year in college, I started studying textiles. So I studied textile engineering, how does fabric made, and then a management, how do you run a mill, and that. But I really wanted to be in sales, which is very unusual for the South because all the sales at that time were in New York City. So I was happy. I knew New York City. I wasn't scared of it. And so it was easy for me to get job offers in New York City, being a Southerner, because they didn't have those.
And then how long did you stay in the company? Because it sounds like you left within a period of time.
Yeah, 6 years. Well, what happened was I came in and I was the first person in the fourth generation to come in. I was like, man, I'm in the catbird seat. And we've never had anything other than somebody in the family run the company. So I said, I'm going to be in a perfect position to run the company. And then 4 of my cousins came in right behind me. I mean, literally within a year, I'm looking at my cousins, and I liked my cousins, but I was like, this is going to be a bloodbath, and I'm going to be 50-something and not get it. I'm going to be really disappointed, and I don't want to go there.
So you were actually looking 25 years plus into the future.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty unusual. This was the other thing that happened to me. So I'm calling on these accounts, particularly in New York City. I would call on what are called jobbers. These are guys that would buy fabric. I was in the fabric division. We had a yarn division too. I was selling fabric, and we had all these off goods or seconds or overruns or bad cut, whatever. We had all this stuff, millions of yards of product that we had to sell off at lower prices. These jobbers would buy that and resell it. And I got to be friends with a guy named Art Friedman. And he had a little job. He had probably 4 people in his office or 3 people in his office and him. And I'm out to lunch with him one day. I was like, hey, do you mind tell me, what do you pay yourself? And he gave me the number, and it was higher than the CEO was making of this Fortune 500 company I was with. I was like, man, wow. I'm going to work all this time, 25 more years to maybe get to be president. And you're making that much as a little entrepreneur reselling fabric. I was like, something's wrong with this. I need to look into having my own business. So I moved back to Birmingham, and then they wanted to transfer me to Greensboro, North Carolina. I kind of went, this is my chance. I don't mind Greensboro, but I'm going to find myself on this constant moving from place to place. And I met with somebody that said, the most important decision you're going to ever make, and this is a guy that owned 3 or 4 companies, is where do you want to live? I said, well, I'd like to live in Birmingham. Then make your decision. You can do, if you're as good as I think you are, you can do whatever you want and live wherever you want. So pick this. That's going to be more important than money, for example. I said, okay, I'm going to work on something in Birmingham. My father, who called, he was an attorney for entrepreneurs. He said, he supported me. I mean, he could have said, don't do that. You're going to be president of Avondale. Don't worry. But he went, I see what you're talking about. And you may be, Avondale may not even be in business when you're 50 years old, which is exactly what happened. Because all the textile business went overseas. We were making fabrics and selling to cutters. Cutters, Levi Strauss was a cutter and sewer back then. So they had cutting and sewing plants. And we were making fabric for Levi Strauss, Wrangler, Bluebell, H.D. Lee, all the big jean guys. HAS, Henry Siegel, all these big jean companies. Guess, I don't know, you remember all these. Jeans were a big deal back, still are, but a big deal back then. So, and it was all made in the United States, and then it moved overseas, and that killed the fabric business here. So I decided I would start looking, and he helped me find some companies. One was a dog food company. And I was calling on Ralph Lauren, and I was enamored with Ralph Lauren at the time, and I was calling on him. And the reason I was enamored was he would keep getting into different types of products, which is like Levi Strauss only made jeans, and they maybe made some shirts and stuff like that. But Ralph Lauren would get into ties and shirts and suits and all. I was like, how does this work? And he said, I was working with George, his brother. He said, well, we can be in anything we want to be in. We don't have a factory. We just get factories to make the products we want, and we design them and use our specifications, and we pick the fabrics, and we can move however we want to move. I was like, wow, that seems like a better business model than having all these factories that when things slow down, you have to fire all the people, and you're still stuck with the overhead and all the things that happen there. So when I ended up setting up my own company, I set it up that way as we can maneuver with the business and just market. The critical thing that was critical to Ralph Lauren was we're great marketers and product. We're great at product. So I said, I think I'm good at both of those, so I'm going to concentrate on that. And then I got to find the factories to smell the market. Where's the market going? And then move when the market moves, or before the market moves. Sometimes I move too fast before the market catches. We're going back and look at some of our old collections now and going, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's probably hot right now. Shouldn't have dropped that.
So what does it take to be an entrepreneur?
Well, there's, and I didn't come up with this, but I read a book, Gino Wickman. You know who that is? The guy that wrote the EOS?
Traction and Rocket Fuel.
Well, he also wrote an entrepreneur book, and I'm listening to him, and he's describing the 6 traits of an entrepreneur. And I'm going like, wow, I didn't know I had them, but you got to have these. You have to have all 6 of these, and if you don't try it. I would guess that maybe if you had a partner and they had 3 and you had 3, you could probably do it. But there's one trait in there I think you would have a problem with, and it's risk taker. And it's a critical one because you got to be willing to take risk, and timing of the risk is critical. And as you know, buying a stock, so the riskier the stock, generally the better that you do, and vice versa. The worse you do, there's no difference there. But if you don't have that gene, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to be an entrepreneur. And the others are visionary. That's a strategic person that can see the future, or the product, to see the product as visionary, passionate. And you'll know you have this because I know, because everybody goes like, wow, you're really passionate about your stuff. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I am. Problem solver. You're gonna have problems. You're gonna make mistakes like you won't believe. Mistakes that you think are going to put you out of business. I had a bunch of those. Driven's a tough one because you'll know you have driven because you can't sleep. You're thinking about where you're going to go, how you're going to do this. You want to grow 25% a year, whatever it is, 10, 5, whatever your number is, but you're driven to make things move all the time. And they're responsible. It kind of goes without saying. That's kind of an integrity thing, but it's not necessarily that same word. So I'll describe responsible as, you have a problem, and I've had to do this a lot, and you don't have the money to take yourself forward, and instead of not paying your suppliers and not returning their call, you call them first and say, hey, I'm having a little cash flow problem. I need some help. Can you help me on? Some will be jerks and say no, but most of the time they'll be like, what do you need? Especially if you have a relationship with them and they trust you.
As I listen to those, I would think risk is the one that most people shy away from. They want safety. Yep.
When I mentioned this at a cocktail party, they say, why are you successful? Well, one of the reasons is when I'm an entrepreneur, has 6 plates, and this just came up. This is really interesting about risk taking. So they're doing a lot of studies on people that are 75 and older on regrets. What are your regrets? And this isn't necessarily always the number one, but it's in the top 3 of things people say they regret. And what do you think it is?
Not doing something, like not following a dream or an opportunity.
You're exactly right. That's one of them, but it is, and these are correlated, actually. I didn't take enough risk. Somebody was interviewing me the other day, and they were talking about this series of answers people gave when they said, what do you regret? And they said, one of the big ones is, I didn't take enough risks. I was like, man, I think I probably took too many risks. I think I'm like the opposite of that. I'm like, oh my God, did I take risks?
Well, and I think for a lot of people, they work too much.
Yes, that was another one. I spent too much time working. Yeah, I certainly, I don't have a regret of that because it turned out well, but somebody's working for somebody else. Yes, I can see them. Or even if you work for yourself, and that was one of the reasons I changed jobs after I started my 3rd company. I was gone all the time. It was a sales rep company, and I was gone all the time. Sometimes I go out. Many times I go out 2 weeks at a time and not come home. And I had 3 young kids. And I was like, not knowing what it was going to take to have my own company. I was like, I got to start my own company because I can't keep doing this. This driving 50,000 miles a year is just crazy. And I was thinking that if I had my own company, I wouldn't have to travel so much, but I did. It didn't change that much until later on when I was, successful. But then my kids were growing up.
And I think the regret is you missed that part of it.
I did. I missed their games, their soccer or football or whatever it was, or their parties. Or I missed my son's birthday every year because it was January 12th, and I was always at the Atlanta market. I had to be at the Atlanta market every year. And I was like, finally, he just came to understand I was not going to be at his birthday. And so, of course, when I was growing up, birthdays were not a big deal like they are now. Were you like that for you? I was like, birthdays, It's just a birthday. You might get a couple of presents. That was it. You might not get any.
It's different as a kid.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, certainly as a kid these days, even back then, it was just not. I bet I had a bunch of birthdays. I didn't get anything. I didn't even think about it.
So that was also a different time.
Yeah, it was.
We were not so marketed to. There wasn't the expectation of everything like today. Everything is quite abundant.
Yeah, it is. That's a good book, Abundance. Have you read that book?
I have.
It's a great book.
So what does it take to live a successful life?
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot of things, but I think for me, it's been relationships. And so my relationship with the Father, my relationship with my wife, which has been critical. I'll be married 50 years this year, but she was so supportive when I would go, like I paid myself $41,000 a year for 11 years in a row. I was like, Wendy, this is crazy. I mean, I was making $250,000 10 years ago. I can go get a job for triple what I'm making now, maybe probably more than that. No, I believe in you. You can do this. I believe you can do this. Keep going, but this doesn't seem smart. And then she was right. But I was like, and at some point you don't believe in yourself, and that's you need that support level. And in some cases, you're too proud to go to your friends, and say, I'm dying here. I've been paying myself no money. I'm just paying myself enough to get by. How do I can't seem to make this work.
Well, and I think that's true for a lot of business owners, right? They quit to go make money only to find they're working twice as hard, making a fraction of.
I tell you another problem that my accountants have told me about. They said the single biggest problem we see with business owners is they're taking too much money out of the company. And that one thing you didn't do is you didn't take any money out of your company. You left everything in there. And it's made a huge difference as you were successful. It showed up, in your stock price, and everything you did just came back so much better. And these guys, if there was nothing to fall back on if they had a problem, because they were taking everything out every year. If they made $1 million, they'd take 900,000 out, and leave 100 in. Maybe not even that much. Or they go buy a boat, or they go get a plane, or and that the accountants would just go, I can't stop them, but this is not smart.
Well, and businesses go through cycles. And so if you haven't prepared for a down cycle, you get wiped out in the down cycle. Yeah,
you'll learn that really quick. In 2008, when I was going this is important. We doubled every 3.5 years since I started the company. Well, doubling sounds great. It sounds like, wow, you grow 30% a year. Like, that sounds great. But you run out of money really quick. And we're in the seasonal business, so you really had to change all your inventory into cash. And you had to load up on the inventory. And you would never guess. You probably wouldn't even tell the bank that you're going to grow 30% because they don't like that. That's too big growth. But you had all this demand, so you keep trying to fill it. And you have to get money to supply inventory and receivables and more people and all the things you needed to grow the business. Well, then in 2008, we shrunk 30%. I had worked on this to make sure that it would work. And I had to let go a lot of people, but I could break even at 30% less. But wow, I had never fired. I'd fired people for cause, but I'd never had to fire people not for cause, and I'm like, okay, well, every week we were looking at people we had a management team that was looking at people we could let go, and then we would let them go that week. Eventually, it got to be where the people in the room that were deciding who to let go, we were letting go. And that was really tough. And then getting through that period, and we had done a deal with Royal Bank of Scotland, the largest bank in the world at the time. And so we had sort of unlimited cash, and that came to a screeching halt when they lost $60 billion in the fourth quarter of 2008, the largest loss in corporate history. And they started squeezing their accounts to get money because they didn't have any money. And so it was Bank of England ended up saving them. I think that's one reason I survived, but there's a lot of other reasons as well.
And that happens. And I think people have to realize, though, on the other end of that, when the economy goes bad, you can lose your job for no good reason.
Right, for no good reason. You're exactly right. It happened again during COVID. So what happened during COVID? It hits. You think you're going to go out of business. You start looking at your bottom 10, and then you start looking at your bottom 20, and that's who the first ones to go are the 10, and you're going to wait a little while. Okay, this isn't getting any better. Let's let the next group go. And, it's a tough, but I mean, I kind of got off base there. You were asking me. So I think relationships, it's not just your wife or your father or when I say father, I mean God, not my father. Because by the time it got really important, I didn't have my father. So relationships with your staff, your employees, your vendors, your clients, it's all like interrelated. I mean, I think to me, that is a critical part of life, business life, and life in general.
So how is spirituality fit into all of this?
Okay. You want to go Father, Son, Holy Ghost spirituality?
Yeah.
The Son, Holy Spirit. Okay, so I'm going to go to when I almost died. All right, so, and I'll start with the Great Recession. So eventually I figured out I wasn't going to figure this out by myself. So, and you're not sleeping. I always say you don't need amphetamines to stay awake. You're trying to go to sleep. You can't go to sleep because you're thinking about what can I do? I'm going to save the company. Eventually, I bought some cows because I was thinking I wouldn't have anything to eat. I better get some cows and make more cows. And I said, I don't want to hunt for my food. Anyway, that's beside the point. So I would start praying, just pray, like, I don't know what to do. Give me wisdom. And I would do that constantly, all the time. And finally, I said, I'm not going to get through this by myself. You're going to have to help me get through this because I have no idea what to do. I've never been in a situation like this. And I can tell you that, I didn't get the voice saying, this is what you do, but I know that he was with me every time I went into a meeting. And I had a lot of critical meetings with the bank and everything else on what to say and do next to get through the situation I was in. And that's a business. I think I relate that to business, but I think there's a personal thing too. And then how everybody says, how do you get the Holy Spirit? How do you get spirituality? But it's about being in the Word. To me, it's about being in the Word and then following the Word to get to where you need to be, where you're dependent on somebody besides yourself. You're not using your own self to make decisions. There's a tendency to want to do that. You think your ego, and you do need, here's what you need in business. You need confidence, right? You don't, and some people mix confidence and ego up. And I think they're the same, but they're not the same. In fact, when we're looking for managers in different seats within the organization, we want ego. We want somebody to like themselves. We want confidence because when they're talking to somebody, and particularly a client or even another employee, we need them to have confidence that that they know what they're doing. And so you've got to have that. We call it a big A. No, don't take that the wrong way. But it's something that says this person has confidence and they can do the job that we need them to do. And so we're looking for those high A's that can do that. And I think that's critical. You got to have confidence, but you don't have to be cocky to have confidence.
It kind of all comes together. Yeah. Eventually, you have to figure out how it goes together. And, in life, you have to have a little bit of grit.
Yeah, I think the grit, that's when my son introduces me to people that don't know me, that's something he uses. He saw a speech on TED Talk on grit. I can't, it's a female that gives, I can't remember. Have you seen that? I don't know where he watched that and he went, wow, that's my dad. He's got that. It's pushing through those extremely difficult situations to get to the other side without giving up. And I don't know if your audience is so rich that they can fathom any of this.
Everybody faces obstacles,
Yeah.
right?
Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or those guys, they certainly in the last year they've had some issues.
That they have. And so you have to learn how to show up when you don't want to. And I think that's really the tough part of it. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So you wrote a book about your life. What inspired you to write the book?
I think a lot of it was heritage related. A lot of it was I'd like my grandchildren's grandchildren to see that it wasn't easy. Because if it's, we started, we were zero. We started at zero, and we'll probably be close to 500 million in a few years. And it's a lot. You probably know this, but it's a lot easier to raise to run $100 million company than it is to run a $1 million company. And the challenges are completely different. Your talent's completely different. It's just everything changes, and larger numbers. I think it becomes. I'm not sure because we're not there yet. But I'd say even larger than that, it would be much easier to run. 250 million to 500 million is probably going to be easier than 1 to 100 for sure.
Well, I think when you're at 1 million, you can't afford help, right? That is the biggest thing.
You're cleaning the bathroom yourself.
Yeah.
Yourself.
And I think that's a big part of it. It is until you get to much larger numbers that you can actually start to afford and get good help. And that's one of the things I don't think people realize. It does take a lot to get to that point and to survive.
Certainly didn't see that I was going to be cleaning bathrooms. I am doing it. I was just like, oh my God, am I ever going to not be cleaning bathrooms? I don't know how to clean a bathroom. Like that. That's a silver spoon problem right there.
It is. As you meet young people, what wisdom do you have to share with them to say, hey, this is maybe how you should think about your journey?
The young people that I have in the company, I've taken a lot of them I really hate it because a lot of them leave me. I was like, I treat them like my kids. Is I like to show them how it works. So I do most of the design work for the outdoor furniture brand, Summer Classics. And I'll take these young kids under my wing and say, all right, we're going to do this collection. And they're going like, where'd you come up with that idea? Why was that? I said, well, there was one particular situation where I was in China and I had 3 of my designers with me. And I started working on something and we're almost finished with the line. And I was like, you know what? Back in the 60s, I was in Hawaii with my family, and there was one chair I remember that was in every hotel. And it was made out of a different material. And I was working with the guys that had been in the wicker business a long time. And they were saying, I was saying, do you remember that chair? McGuire made it back in the 60s. And we could actually go online and look at it. What is that material? He said, well, that's Sika. And I said, can we replicate that material. So they went and they actually had the material, the raw material for it, went and got it and replicated it in polyethylene. And I started working on this design, and the designers were like going, what in the hell are you doing? I was like, I think this hasn't been done in outdoor, and it's going to resonate with people that are my age. This was probably 20 years ago. And they're going to really like it because even though they don't realize they've seen something like it in the past, back in the 60s, it was really popular, and I'm going to bring it back with a new twist and make it outdoor. And it was a monster success. And they were going like, how do you know that? I said, well, I'm using what I know from the past to bring it to the present. I think every element of what we do has something to do with the past. And you can't just say, I'm cool, I know what's cool, and start drawing stuff for me and showing it to me and saying, I think this will sell, without some reference to something else. I mean, even if you're copying somebody and changing a little bit, I'm better with that than just you think it looks good. Because I don't care what you think. I care what our customer thinks looks good, but I don't care what you think looks good. And then we'd come out with a product. We'd take it to a photo shoot. We'd then take it to show. We'd color it. That was a really critical part of it. Like, what color should this product be? And then what cushions should go on it? So to complete the look, take it to a photo shoot, have something in your mind of what it's going to look like at a photo shoot, shoot it, get it in the catalog, go to market and sell thousands of them or tens of thousands of them. And then sell it, ship it, collect the money, and the process starts over again. And they get to see, wow, that's pretty cool. From a blank piece of paper, an idea comes to life. It's colored, gets made, colored, goes to market, sells, and repeats itself. And it might sell for 10 years. Or I have some stuff that lasted 20 years. I thought the product life cycle was 4 years. And I've just been in this constant design thing. And this year we were like, I don't know, everything's selling. What do we drop?
We're in definitely a different market now.
Certainly furniture we are, and particularly outdoor, because people want to sit outside because COVID ain't going to get you outside. That's a redneck way of saying it.
Well, but I think it's also just people are stuck at home. They're working from home. Depending on what your home looks like, you want more space, and the easiest space, at least privacy-wise, is your backyard. And so...
Speaking of spaces, my space and yours look almost identical. Did you notice that?
Yes.
My bookshelves are a little darker than yours, but other than that, and I don't have so many paperbacks, but close, very close.
You like to read as well.
You should see my library. This is peanuts compared to that. I have a 2-story library with a gallery around the top. You know, it's incredible.
And people don't really do that anymore, do they?
I don't think so, because they're getting, they're going to read the book on their iPad or Audible, which I love Audible. I have to say, I'm a huge Audible fan.
I still like paper.
Yeah, I do too.
I do listen to books, audio. I do Kindle, but if it's truly a book that I love, I want it in paper. It's just a different experience, I think.
Well, it works in reverse too. So I just read a book, well, not just, but we're the largest importer in the state of Alabama. So, and we're in China big time. China's our biggest supplier, of product. And there's a book by Graham Allison called Destined for War. It's about the coming war with China and U.S. And the guy that's reading it is so good that you just want to go, wow. I'm not sure I would feel the same way about this book if I had read it. This guy, he's kind of intense, you know what I'm saying? And Graham Allison has been around a long time. He was a teacher at Harvard in geopolitics. And so you kind of get into his brain by listening to this guy talk about, all the things that are going on in China right now. The Xi Jinping is really changed China completely. It's a huge difference now than it was 5 years ago. We're living.
So how has your supply chain been? Because that's one of the biggest issues that people are facing.
Well, I'm in a very fortunate position of having contracts with a lot of the shippers, but never anticipated that we're having a 65% growth in order activity and a 45% growth in shipments. We can't ship as much as we're selling, but we didn't anticipate when we did our contracts with the shipping lines. We contracted for like 20% more, which is a lot. And we were originally thinking 10% more. And so what's happened is on that other percentage, we're getting killed. Our Indonesian imports were $6,000 for a container from Indonesia to Alabama. And now they're $19,000 or $22,000. And so it's hit our bottom line to the tune of anywhere between $1 million and $1.5 million a month. And unlike some of my competitors, a lot of people just increase their prices retroactive, even on orders they had in-house. We haven't done that yet, but we're going to have a really hard time catching up with all the money that we've lost by eating a lot of that freight. We have a 10% surcharge in now that we uncovered, and we've raised prices at least 20%. So you're looking at almost a 30% increase since June of last year. Crazy.
Do you see any of it coming back to normal anytime soon?
China has already gone from 20,000 back to 6, and they were somewhere around 5. So they've gotten back to semi-normal. I'm worried that China has got something going on with the freight lines, because why would Indonesia be 20 and China be 6? Unless China was trying to make sure the tariffs, Indonesia couldn't compete with them, or India, or any of those places. Thailand, you can't even get a container. Forget it. If you pay $30,000, you can't get a container. You can't get the box. I don't know what's going on there, but it's a huge disruptive thing. I had a situation last month where Walmart's built a big plant, the distribution warehouse down in Mobile, and that's where we take all our containers into, which is great because we're not using California. But they took all the trailers, and so I couldn't get my product off the yard, and they were charging me $1,000 a month per container. And it wasn't my fault. It was, you couldn't get the equipment, and it was like nothing you could do. It's like being held hostage. It freed up. I guess Walmart filled the plant up and it got available, but it was a nail biter for us. Big deal.
And that's business, right? Constantly dealing with all of these types of things.
That's the amphetamine thing I was talking about. Think about that stuff instead of sleeping.
That's very true.
That's that problem solver thing I was talking about. We were trying to move all of as much production out of China as we could to Indonesia. And so we're making this huge shift, and we got the 55% Indonesia and 45% China. And we're like, yeah, we're making progress. And then Indonesia went, hey, we can't get any more workers. We're having to buy all the raw materials from China anyway. And now our freight's gone up so much that we're not competitive with China. It's a game.
It is a game. And you got to keep playing it and keep pivoting. And
yeah, pivoting that's one of our design is our acronym we use for our core values, which is dedicated, enthusiastic for E, synergy, DESI, integrity, G, goal-oriented, and N, nimble. So that's the pivoting thing.
And that's what you have to do. And people need to realize that. We always like to get people to take action every week. What is one thing people can do this week to take a step forward?
I don't know. Get into the Word, read the Bible. So I'd say that's one thing I would, if they, they have to be kind of inclined somehow to do that. So just me saying it's probably not going to force them into it. one thing I like to try to think I'm always trying to do is to be a better person. So any step you can make in that direction. And here, I'll tell you one thing I've done is I have one of my best friends has Alzheimer's. And this is just an example. I'll use it as an example. And so I take him to lunch every week. And I take him to my farm. Anytime he wants to go, if I'm going, I always text him and say, I'm leaving Friday. I'll be back Monday. Do you want to go? Most of the times he says yes. And he's in early stage, so it's not like he's forgot everyone. But he's like, why are you doing this? I said, because if it was me, I would want somebody to do the same thing for me. I wouldn't like to be just left out in the cold because I got, Alzheimer's. I'm not going to call you. As long, you have this narrow window of something that's called life, and you have the things that you can do to make it better for you and other people. And you gotta, and my window is a lot narrower than yours or most people's. And so I'm trying to live that short period of time left in the best possible manner.
And I think that is one piece of wisdom that young people don't get. We all have a short time. It goes fast. And the older you get, the more you see that window narrowing.
Here are an example of that. So in 2013, I started having a dream every night I was going to die. I go to the quarterly meeting. It's actually our annual meeting in October to decide what we're going to do the next year, 2014. We're at the last lunch, and I'm walking back. We're outside, we ate outside, and I'm walking back with my son. I was like, I'm going to die. It's going to be soon. And I can't. And he says, you're crazy. I said, yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I have a dream every night I'm going to die. And I'm like, after a while, it gets to me. My leg is killing me. I couldn't hardly get up this morning to come to the meeting. And the next day, I'm in the hospital. They've x-rayed my legs, and I've got blood clots all on my legs, and I just can't breathe. They do a CAT scan on my lungs. So you have 5 blood clots in your lungs. Any one of those could kill you. They put me in the hospital. The next morning, my wife stays over that night with me. I'm in Atlanta. I had gone out of town, and I'm like, I got to go to the hospital. Something's terribly wrong with me. Go to Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta. Next morning, I had one of the blood clots goes through and hits my heart or my lungs or something, and my heart starts to stop. And I'm pushing the buzzer for the nurse to come, and they don't come. I'm like, I'm going to die right here in the bed. So a lot of people don't realize this. You get a signal to your brain that you're going to die. And it is like the loudest bell you've ever heard. It's just like, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. You've got a few minutes here. Say whatever you're going to say. My wife has gone down to get a cup of coffee in the cafeteria, and I've been asleep. I just wake up and I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst heartburn I've ever had. And then I realize it's not heartburn. I'm like, I'm dying. So finally the nurse comes on and says, what's wrong, Miss White? I'm like, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm dying, and I got a very short window here. I'm going to die in the next, 10 minutes probably. Please come in here. So the nurses rush in there. My wife comes in after they've come in, and I apologize. I'm just going, I'm sorry. I'm dead. I'm going to die. And my heart rate, they've taken my blood pressure and said 70/30, which means your heart rate is 30, is stopping. And I can see myself turning white because my blood's not pumping into my brain. And then they push me over in the bed. Your bed goes up to watch TV, but it also goes down so that your legs are higher than your head. Push me down, fill my IV full of dopamine and salt water, and I come back. And all I was thinking about is, that's what life was like. Wow, eternity seems like a really long time. And I was just thinking, it wasn't about heaven or hell, I was thinking infinity. Infinity is so much longer than, I was 63 at the time. 63 I was like going, wow, that was really short. I'm going to die today. And the nurses are going, take him to ICU, take him to ICU. And I'm calculating where the elevator is. I was like, hey guys, we're not making it to the elevator. I'm dead. And my wife knew of it. She was 100% sure too. So when I came back, I didn't believe it. You know, I had a year of dreams. I didn't tell my wife about the dreams because it was scary. I said, I was telling my son because I said, you better be ready to take over because this is going to happen pretty quick. And I thought that was it. I thought, okay, this is the reason I had the dreams. And then I came back and I was like, am I going to die? And then I cried uncontrollably for hours. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't have it say a sentence. And so I was like, what is wrong? Why am I here? I shouldn't be here. Something's wrong. And then I got this signal like, write the book. This is one of the main reasons I wrote the book. So I was like, I can't write, right? I've never written a book. I'm not even sure I can do it. I'm telling you, write the book. So I'll try. And so I tried. I couldn't write the book. I ended up getting somebody to write it for me, which was, it took me, 10 years to get that done almost. So anyway, that's a lot of people. I felt like I was there to say, you're going to get a signal, and it could be tomorrow, to tell other people this is an important part, and your life's going to be over, and it's infinity. Think 1,000 years times 1,000, and you're not even there. It's forever. It's eternity. It's infinity. However you want to think about it, this little window we have on Earth is really short. Make of it the best you can.
And that is very, very true. And it's something that we all need to come to grips with. And I think many people don't. And that comes back to what you started to talk about earlier, is the regrets of dying, is they don't go out and do what they wanted to do, or they wait too long. One day I'll do it. And one day doesn't always come. And especially with COVID, you have no idea when your day is or isn't. One day you're healthy and the next day you're not.
One thing I didn't tell you, this is the pivoting. So I left Avondale Mills and I took 25% of my net worth and I put it into a company. It happened to be in the furniture business in Birmingham. And really in 6 months, I said, I have made a terrible error. I'm making less than half of what I was making. I can't even feed my family. And this thing is not going to work. I have no way to save it. I don't have enough money to save it. The guy that owns it is not going to, he has the money, but he's not going to put it in. He's made it very clear he's not putting any more money in. I just need to get out of here, and I got to go do something, and I got to figure out what to do. And so I started my own company, and fortunately that worked. This is interesting. I started a sales rep company. So I immediately picked up lines. It was really easy to get lines to sell. But what I didn't realize is they wouldn't pay me because they had cash flow problems, like the company that I had bought for them. And I went, wow, I'm a payable. I'm not an employee. I'm a payable. And so I was like, if I ever have my own business where I'm paying reps, I'm never going to do this to them. I'm going to pay them as if they're employees. That was another great lesson I learned. But so I went from making $60,000. I had this great job. I was 28 years old in 1978, making $60,000 to making $25,000, and can't pay my bills. And then start my own company, and pretty quick started making $200,000 or more. And then I tell you the story about I'm gone all the time. And then I was gone all the time. I was like, I got to stop doing this. And then I went back from 200,000, 250,000 to 41,000. I was like, did I make a good decision or what? This is crazy. It's just, that's life. That's how life works. It's not, you don't get thrown roses all the time.
That it is not. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Well, I think if you hadn't got it out of what I said so far, you missed the whole thing. Yeah, I think the relationships are really critical. I think the relationship with your wife, obviously being the most important earthly relationship you have, and the father, number one, and then, everybody you have to come in contact with, assuming you can. If you read the book, you'll find out I had some pretty rough relationships. I had an El Diablo in there, which is Spanish for the devil. There's some pretty rough characters in the book that I was like, because I was a trusting soul. So I don't say you shouldn't be a trusting soul, but you're going to run into some tough characters if you get in business.
In that you are, and you have to make the choice, but always take, the positive and take the right road, and whatever happens, happens. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I would say probably the same thing, the relationship thing. I mean, I always valued my relationships, but not to the degree I do at the end of life. I think, when you're young, I just think about all the friends I had that I don't have anymore. You know what I'm saying? That all the way through high school, and I've lost a lot of my high school friends who died already. So, in very young ages, I was like, wow, the shortness of life, and then taking risk. But I took the risk. I took probably ridiculous risk, in the business. I've really taken a lot of risk in other ways, financial risk in stocks, which have paid off, but it could have not worked. But I decided I would do that, and it's worked really well for me. And as a result, well, Donald Trump got me into, I don't want to watch the news anymore. And I finally switched to just only watching financial news. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get tired of it. I'm kind of already there, but I was like, it really helped me learn as much as I possibly could about money, how to handle money. So if you're a kid, handling money, if you're young, I won't say a kid, but if you're young, how to handle money, particularly growing your money is a critical part of life.
And I think that ties into our final question is, if you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Well, I guess I would still go back to the relationship thing first. I think the relationship, now 18-year-old is probably not married. So there's a 99% chance they're not. So I would say, I jumped into stocks and when I was in my 20s and failed. And so I didn't get back into them. If you look at Warren Buffett, if you look at Warren Buffett's financial net worth.
Billions, many, many billions.
But he made something like 85 or 90% of that after he was 68, something like that. Is that what it is? There's a number.
It was much later in life that he made all his money because of compounding, but he built the foundation early in life. It just took a while for it to grow.
And it's your reputation, too. It takes a lifetime to build a reputation. It takes a second to lose it. I think that's a really important quote. My favorite quote, though, is you get the future you plan for. So if you'll plan, you set a goal and you make a plan and you will get there. Now you're not going to get there right away. You may fail. And then you have to replan because you did something wrong in your planning or something happened. And you have to replan and just keep going for that goal. Like I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 40. And I had at 35, I had a negative net worth of $260,000 minus dollars. I was like, okay, well, my $1 million plan is not going to work. But I got there. I came back from that and I got there. Of course, it was a paper $1 million, but I still got there. I was like, right. Well, that's made me know money's not the most important thing in life. Although my grandfather said, money's not the most important thing in life, but it's second to whatever's first. So like, okay.
It makes everything else a lot easier.
Yeah, it sure does.
If people would like to learn more about you, the company, the book, what's the best place for them to go?
Well, there's bewwhite.com. That's BEWWHITE.com, or summerclassics.com. Or if you want the book, Amazon's there. And this is kind of a cool story. If you like Audible, we talked about Audible a little bit. If you like Audible, my roommate in college was an actor, producer, director, a guy named Michael Young. And he said, I want to read your book. I said, you mean for Audible? Yeah, okay, you can read. So he reads it. And then I listened to him and I said, man, you were crying in a couple of sections of it. He's like, well, what were you talking about? Which section? I was like, okay, so you were acting. I said, I thought you would remember where you were crying. Anyway, he does a pretty good job if you like Audible.
And we'll put links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Appreciate it.
I always love to talk to people who are 20 years ahead of me. I want to know what's coming and how I can plan and do a better job. It's one of the reasons I work out so much, because I don't want my health to decline. I want to start from a high bar. It's also why I spend so much time on flexibility. I just took up karate. I'm sitting here with kids, but it's fun. We're also now transitioning to the kids being on their own. And so I've got a lot more time in figuring out what those next steps are. We can learn from the paths of others, and that hopefully makes ours a little bit smoother. This week's action step was to be a better person. It's really not that hard. You just have to put a little effort into it. As you heard, the sooner you focus on it and building relationships, the better life can be. And so I encourage you to do that. Life's a journey, and we've got to just keep taking those steps, one foot at a time, being very clear on where we want to go. And if we don't like where we're going, to make the change that will take us in a different direction. Life isn't always easy. Sometimes we get hit with things that we don't want to. And, as he mentioned, and I see it myself, a lot of the people who were dads growing up around my kids are no longer here. And that's a shame. Life is short. So enjoy it, do your best, and continue onward. Next week, we've got on Rod Cleef. He's going to talk about how to create fulfillment in life. Great story of how he had it all, and yet he wasn't thrilled. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you please share it? I'd appreciate that. Have a wonderful and abundant week. Thanks for listening.